Being a bartender is fucking crazy, dude. Like, it's this total, like, terrible, dysfunctional family. It is a family, too.
What, a bartender or a mixologist? What is it?
Bartender. Yeah, bartender. I mean, I don't know. I like the craft cocktail kind of thing too. That's like a good name for it as well. But yeah, I don't like mixologist. Mixologist makes you sound like just like an arrogant prick, you know?
A little too pretentious.
Yeah, exactly, man. Like bartender, just, you know, that's what we do. You know, you are a bartender. You're not.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think there's any difference between me. I mean, besides like what we're making, but there's no difference between me at Hola Arepa compared to the people at Pat's Tap. You know what I mean? Like, we're all bartenders. We're there to, you know, serve somebody at the end of the day. It's not just about, you know, the cocktail that you're making. You have to be able to kind of have the gift that you have too. So.
Yeah.
I would say that I started getting really interested in it when I was working at Town Talk Diner. Like working under Jesse Held, and working with all those guys that, like, in Burke worked there too from Hola. That was the first time that I was kind of exposed to that bartending and seeing that. And I mean, at Asia too, Brad, our bar manager there, was doing some really interesting stuff too. And yeah, like seeing like doing Town Talk was just like blew my mind. You know what I mean? Like it was. I thought that bartending was a certain thing, and it was like, then I walk into that, and I'm like, oh my god, these guys are like, you know, making their own liqueurs and making their own ginger beers and like all this stuff. And it's just like, holy shit, like where'd you guys learn this stuff? And then I kind of figured out that it's like, you know, there's mentorship within this city now, and there was kind of back then. Like some of these guys really knew what they were doing, but you also just have to learn outside of work too. It goes a lot further than just like showing up to work and learning stuff. Like you have to have devotion towards it and like actually want to read and kind of educate yourself on your own and make errors, you know, like making syrups at home and fucking them up and being like, well, why did this happen? You know, like reading about that kind of thing. And yeah. God, man, I think I started when I was around like 21, 22. So I'm 26
Bartending?
now. Yeah. Off and on, like, you know, I started learning back then. I would say my first bartending gig was at Heidi's, so I think I was probably 22, 23. The customer reaction, always. That's always like, and even if it's a negative one, you know, like I enjoy making drinks for people, but occasionally you get it wrong, you know, like you'll have somebody, I had a girl, you know, probably like a week ago, asked me for something like tequila, kind of sweet but not overly sweet, juice, you know, whatever. So I made her something and I put a little bit of Campari or like Aperol in it, which is like more bitter. And she tasted it, and no one will ever tell you when they don't like a cocktail. That's just like, you know, people are just trying to be polite, which is like, that's fine, but tell me, because then I'll make you something else. But like, she didn't tell me, and you can sit and watch people, man. Like you can see them and they're just like, she doesn't like that drink. Like, I know she doesn't like that drink. So you have to come up and like, all right, so you're not drinking that very fast. What's wrong with it? They're like, no, I love it. And you're like, no, all right, come on. Like, tell me what's actually going on. And then eventually they'll be like, oh, well, you know, I didn't like this part about it. And then you rework it, you know? Like, you're not gonna always have it right, but most of the time it's always that gratification of like them being like, this is great, you know, like this is amazing, this is exactly what I wanted. So. A lot of times it doesn't have to be something off the dome, you know, like you can just like have something on the menu that you're like, oh yeah, totally, this menu drink is exactly what you want. Yeah, that's probably like the first big like competition I've ever actually like kind of won something in. I've entered a few other competitions, like doing the Iron Bartender thing. Jake did that with me too. It was great, you know, like that was a lot of fun. Accomplishment, yeah, I'd probably say that's one of the best, like, accomplishment wise. I would say the restaurant industry in general is for sure. I mean, you gotta have a backbone for sure. You can't just be like, you have to be able to take insults. I mean, compliments and insults at the same time. You have to be able to take constructive criticism really well, which is something that a lot of people can't, you know?
Yeah.
People have a problem with that. Or, you know, a certain situation happening where you get into an argument with a friend that you work with or something like that, you know? It's the type of thing where you have to be able to forget about that and not hold grudges and be able to, you know, okay, this is service and then this is real life, you know, personal life. And maybe like when me and Jake worked together, I'm sure we probably had an argument at some point working together. And at the end of the day, we're sitting there fucking getting drunk at the end of the day. You know, like that's just how it is. It is a family too, you know, it's this total like terrible, dysfunctional family. You know, like you have these people that you're around more than like any of your loved ones in your life, but they also, you argue with them, but then you also are your own support group. It's cool. It's something that I've never experienced at any other job I've ever worked. Definitely. Oh man. That's what a lot of people would say. Right? Being able to talk to all different kind of people, man. It's a diverse it's definitely not like any other job you can ever have. You know, like you're gonna deal with ups and downs with people and ups and downs in your life too. And it's kind of the coolest thing about bartending is that you can be mad about something, you have a fight with your girlfriend or whatever happens that day, but once you're behind that bar, you forget about it. And you kind of like feed off the energy of the people that are around you and be able to talk to them and kind of have great conversations, and it'll make you completely forget that you had a shitty day before you work. And that's probably the best thing for me, for sure. First, always for me will be and this is kind of like it goes together. I can list off certain things that people do all the time.
Right.
But top one for sure is the getting attention from the bartender.
Okay.
Just like, you know, the wave, hand in your face, or just the stare down. That's like the stare down is hilarious.
Okay.
You know? Like, they're just sitting there like mean mugging you while you're just sitting there trying to make drinks, and you're like I see you, you know, like. And a lot of times to like get rid of that situation, you can always, you know, tell them that too.
Right.
Like I always be like, hey, you know, I'm busy, I'll be right with you. Like I see that you're there. And that's usually cool, but then there's also the people that will snap on you too, and you're just like, okay. I don't think people realize that you know what your surroundings are. Like even if you're sitting there and you're, you know, just deep in like tons of tickets in the service well or something, you know that there's someone in front of you and you know that they need help because that's what you do, you know, like that's our job. So especially with the kind of cocktails like that we make at Hola Arepa in particular, like they take a little bit more time than, you know, going to the bar and ordering a vodka soda or something like that. So I think people are, that's it, you know, the instantaneous thing. People are used to ordering a drink and it being there right away. You know, and your drink's gonna taste better if you let us have that extra time to make it taste better. So. See, and that's a hard thing to say too, because it's there's a thin line. I would just say being patient more than anything, like, you know, getting your attention, but not necessarily like getting in your way or stopping what you're doing.
What's the best way that somebody's gotten your attention? Right there.
The look. Like there's always like the, you know, like if you're at a bar and, you know, like there's probably 3 people deep and you've served the first 2 people right there. Just like being able to look at that person and just kind of look at them and they nod at you and you're like, oh, yep, all right, cool. And like, what do you need? You know, and then you just kind of can get them to come up to the front and be able to order from you. It's people. There's most people that get it, you know. Like there's occasional people that are just bad at it, but I would say definitely like just to kind of look like, you know, or just being able to point at somebody and just be like, hey, you know, like you need a drink, or like I said, usually like we have a good perspective of what's going on at the bar, so it's never like an issue for us. Like we know you're there, you know. I think that's kind of an issue with like the craft cocktail thing. People like are starting to understand it now because they come in and they like order food too, you know, like they understand that it's a meal. But like people that would come in to, you know, like a place like when I worked at Parlor, and they would come in and order like 2 drinks, which are, you know, our drinks there were $12 each, so they're not cheap. I mean, and they're even more time than what we make at Hola now. And people would tip, you know, like $1 on a drink. Where you're just kind of like, all right, you know, like, I get it, like I understand, so you can't blame them. It's kind of like because I even do that, you know, like when I'm at a club or like, you know, like that first ad going to see a show or something like that. If I order a beer, it's $6, yeah, I'm just throwing down $1, you know what I mean? Like that's just kind of just mental reaction. So I understand why people do it, but I think some people just don't understand how much actually goes into what you're making. And like, you know, the process of that cocktail was kind of made like, you know, 3 days before you were even in the door, because we had to make the syrup, we had to, you know, if it's one of our bottled cocktails at Hola, we had to put that in a keg, carbonate it, and then bottle it and cap it, you know, like there's a lot that goes into cocktails. It's not just like just pouring something and you're done. So I think that's a good way for people to kind of perceive it and look at it that way, where it's almost like, I wouldn't say we're chefs, but I would say that we're creating something for you, and it's going to be a little bit more time, and but it's going to taste better and it's fresh. So. Oh man, I don't know. I don't really mind any drink that much. Mojitos in the middle of the winter are pretty funny. It's like, and a lot of places, like a lot of bars just don't even have them in. We do, so we'll make it for you, but it's just a weird one where I'm just like, really? You're in a mojito? It's like, you know, -5 degrees outside. Great.
Bloody Mary at 70.
Yeah, that one too. I was gonna say that too. Bloody Mary, like later at night, you know, like you're coming in at like 8 or 9 o'clock and you want a Bloody Mary with like all the fixings on it, and I don't have that like set up at all because it's not the time that we serve it. It's just kind of like, oh, okay, cool. Well, you're getting like the bare minimum bloody, but it's still gonna taste great. So.
Yeah.
Well, do you feel a bartender should go to bartending school or
No.
to start? Yeah, and that's what I've heard from a lot of bartenders. Like they feel like you should just learn.
I think the best way. I was actually just talking to my mom about this today, and I was, because she has like a student that's getting into bartending, and I was like asking about going to bartending school. And I was like, hell no, dude. No, I think honestly, dude, the best way to bartend is if you've been in a restaurant for a little while, lie. Lie. Say you are a bartender. Like the next job that you apply for, say you were bartending at some point. That's eventually how people get into bartending.
Oh, really?
And that's the story of like Dale DeGroff, who's like one of this, you know, world-renowned bartenders who makes his own bitters, and he's a legend in cocktails. And that's his story. Is like, you know, he talks about how the first bartending gig he had was a party that he had to bartend, and he was a busboy at the time. And somebody came up to him and was like, hey, we need a bartender for this party. Do you know anybody that bartends? He's like, oh, I know how to bartend. So then they're like, oh, okay, cool. Well, come up with a few drinks to have, and then cool, that'll be your menu. So he talks about walking up to the bar and like going to the guy with a pen and paper and being like, tell me 6 of the most popular cocktails right now, and tell me how to make them right now. And that's how he got into it, you know, like that's just how it happens, you know what I mean? I think it started, I think Jake and I did it the right way, kind of, you know, where we started bar backing. That's obviously like the way to do it, is start bar backing, getting behind a bar, knowing how to move behind a bar, just technique, watching the other bartenders that are around you. That's the biggest thing, I would say, is you can teach people like how to make a drink, but you can't teach them how to have a certain technique and move efficiently behind a bar. And I think that's the biggest part that a lot of people don't get all the time. So, yeah. I think the misconception too with a lot of bartenders is that we're all just fucking partiers and just like drink all the time. I think that's a misconception for sure. I think there's people like that too. The restaurant industry is really what you make out of it. You can't really if you come into it and then you just have this party mentality, it's gonna destroy you. You know, like that's kind of how it is. But if you come into it smart about your money, you're gonna make good money and be successful.
They're inspired by anybody else.
Right there, books. I mean, like, yes, inspiration from everybody around me for sure. I mean, like, I can vibe with. Like just sitting behind the bar on a slower night, like on a Wednesday night when I work with my buddy Ryan at Hola, you know, like we'll just start talking about cocktails, or like I was literally just texting you guys, or texting before you guys got over here with Bert from Hola, and we're just starting to rattle off ideas about a new cocktail list, just thinking about it, really. Start reading books, looking at stuff online, looking at different people's menus, different things that people are doing or throughout the country, different things that people are doing locally, looking at, Pip Hanson's drink list at Marvel is always makes me inspired for sure, because that guy is doing some crazy stuff that no one's doing in this city, and it's really cool and interesting. And just kind of looking outside the box and starting to kind of experiment with weird stuff, and actually looking at a lot of watching cooking stuff, kind of programs or documentaries, and looking at cooking books too. Just seeing different kinds of things that you can do with making a syrup or a gas streak or whatever. People are just doing really interesting stuff that I've never thought of, and I'm sure a lot of people in this city have not thought of, but you go to this one spot in this city and people are doing this, it's just cool. Dan does, he kind of started the whole bottled cocktail thing at Hola that we're doing, and that's coming from his background with Joya Soda. So he did Joya Soda, and his man, that guy's flavor profiles and what he does with his stuff is insane. I don't get it. He makes great bitters, and he's found ways to make bitters in a faster form than waiting 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It's just he's a mad scientist, man. And that's the level that I'm trying to get to. You know what I mean? Working on stuff all the time. Yeah, I've got enough here to work with where I can experiment with a lot of stuff. Making syrups. I mean, as long as I've got a kitchen, I can make stuff. So. Perfect spot in my mind would be a 10 to 12 seat cocktail bar, maybe a few tables as well, but something really small, and something that you can do something that's really truly seasonal. So you can take ingredients that right now we're coming into a season where blood oranges are in season, kumquats are in season, a lot of citrus, cranberries, that kind of thing, and taking those and making a weekly menu. So you have this weekly menu and having it be kind of a darker, dimmer lit kind of thing. Everybody looks better in candlelight anyways, right. So have tons of candles. I would kind of wood bar. I would love to take a dive bar, seeing Nye's close,
Yes.
Take that spot, turn it into a little bit more of a cocktail-driven place. I mean, it's huge. That's not an issue. But I think that's one of the coolest ideas that people have done in other cities too. Is that they're taking these older dive bars and creating them into something else, where they're taking that old school vibe of a bar, but then adding a great cocktail program to it. And I think that's definitely the coolest idea that I've seen so far. That's not to say I don't like the modern stuff too.
Right.
Modern dim lit.
But this is your perfect world, so you.
But I want something that's I want to be able to have that guy that used to come to this bar before it was what I have. He's been going there for 20 years. I want him to be able to come in there and drink his, Budweiser or whatever the hell he drinks.
Right.
I want to be able to have that neighborhood guy come in every night after he's done with work, but also have people that are coming in, from the suburbs that have read about it or something, that want to see a different kind of perspective on the city. Two girls being at the bar together and trying to hit on you at the same time, and then at the end of it, them both giving their numbers to you. That's a weird situation for sure.
That was uncomfortable, or was that glorious?
I mean, I don't know. You can perceive it both ways, I suppose.
Right, okay.
It's kind of funny. Yeah, it's a weird fucking situation, man.
And
being a bartender is fucking crazy, dude. It's insane. You deal with so much different shit on a daily basis. Jake and I worked at Wondrous together downtown. That was some interesting shit, man. We saw some weird stuff there. This is the best fucking question of the whole night. Cocktail, for sure, because it's just ridiculous and it's fucking Tom Cruise. Coyote Ugly is stupid. Good cocktail movie that you don't know about is a documentary called Hey Bartender. Okay. It's all about the craft cocktail movement in this country, and it's great. It's they interview all of the big wigs in this country, and it's on Netflix and it's in Minneapolis stacks up a lot. Like that's actually something that a lot of people, and I've heard it from people in other cities too, is that like we're doing really great stuff here. Like I've heard that even like LA and New York, like there's some bars that are still, this is not to say that Saint Germain is a bad alcohol, but they're using Saint Germain in a lot of stuff still. And that's like, you know, that was something that was popular like 2 years ago. So it's cool that we're actually kind of on the forefront. I've also heard that about Portland too. Portland and Seattle, that they're really doing some great stuff there too. Industry, seeing where the industry's going. I think this city is just building like crazy amounts in the restaurant industry recently. Like the hospitality industry here has really gotten like serious, and we're actually starting to have kind of some clout, and we have like, you know, having Gavin from Cafe Baloo come in and do Spoon and Stable over in right by Bachelor Farmer over there. That's huge. Like what's his name from French Laundry is an investor in that restaurant. So these are guys that are coming from like some of the best restaurants in the country and are starting to invest in our city. So it's starting to like happen. I think that's the biggest sign of like what this city is going to become, where we're starting to have some serious investors and people be like, oh wow, Minneapolis is actually starting to do something. So I mean, you can see it here too, like the economy's growing here. We're starting to have, you know, rents going up, which sucks, but you know, we're also building as an economy. We're getting bigger. So I think the sky's the limit at this point.
We get fresh. I'm in the Minneapolis. We picked up with the gaffle. Get in the high suit. Who's the one to holler at you? Park gangsta.